So about a week ago, I made a video in regards to the Hoboken train crash and how I believe that it's connected to the Cubs and the Indians in the World Series. I made a video, I think back in August. I'll leave a link in the description as well on that in regards to, I thought that they were foreshadowing the Indians and the Cubs. Anyway, in regards to the Hoboken video that I'll leave in the description, I had talked about how Hoboken, New Jersey was supposedly where the first ever baseball game was played. It was supposedly like a scrimmage was played on October 6th of 1845, 10-6. Prophecy equals 106 in Gematria. And if you don't know what Gematria is, I'll also leave a link in the description of that as well. But basically, it is coding numbers into words, and it is something used by the elite people who control everything that's going on in our world. But the first ever scrimmage was on 10-6, and the curse of the Billy Goat with the Cubs was on 10-6 of 1945. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's connected to Michael Jordan as well. Michael Jordan even first retired on October 6th of 1993. But the actual first game that wasn't a scrimmage between the same team was on June 19th, which just so happens to be the same day that the Cleveland Cavaliers won the NBA Finals this year. There's also the real King James's birthday. Anyway, in the CNN article with the Hoboken train wreck, they made sure to let us know that Chris Christie said there was 114 people injured. And that was very interesting in regards to baseball, because the same day of that train wreck, the Chicago Cubs and the Pittsburgh Pirates tied. And it was the first time there was a tie since the year 2005. And I had previously talked about the year 2005 in regards to the Minnesota Mall stabbing, how it connected to the movie Charlie St. Cloud, and his brother dies in the year 2005. 2005 was the year that the White Sox won for the first time in 88 years. And then the White Sox obviously connects to Michael Jordan when he retired from basketball. He played for the White Sox. The White Sox are also the team that the Cleveland Indians beat in the movie Major League 2 when they qualify for the World Series. You don't find out what happens in the World Series, but they qualify for the World Series by beating the White Sox. And of course, the movie Major League 2 also came out on March 30th, 1994, just before the start of the baseball season when Michael Jordan played for the Birmingham Barons, which is connected to the Chicago White Sox. Also, in Gematria, if you write out Cleveland Indians, it equals 94. They finished the regular season with 94 wins this year. But sorry, I'm getting off topic. So back to that train wreck, I talked about how Chris Christie said there was 114 people injured, and the Cubs tied that day. If you write out the word tie in Gematria, tie equals 114. The Cubs also finished the regular season with 103 wins, meaning if they win the World Series, they'll finish the season with 114 wins. And the last time that there was a tie in 2005, it was 114 days before the World Series. Another thing I mentioned was that the Cubs tie was against the Pittsburgh Pirates. If you write out Pittsburgh Pirates in Gematria, it equals 228. The Cubs and the Indians are both cursed through Detroit. The Indians are cursed through a trade with Detroit. They got Harvey Kuhn. They traded away Rocky Colavito. The curse of the Billy Goat on the Cubs happened in the World Series of 1945 when they were playing Detroit. Anyway, a really big deal this year in regards to the Cubs was that they picked up Chapman. And Chapman just so happens to be born on 2/28. And that's also the same day that Harvey Kuhn, the guy who basically cursed the Cleveland Indians, he died on Chapman's birthday in 1988. So he literally died on Chapman's birthday. And he also played 57 games with the Cubs in his career. He died at the age of 57. If you write out the word World Series equals 57. And also on the same day that the Cubs tied the Pirates, the Cleveland Indians versus the Detroit Tigers game was postponed and it was the game that they didn't even have to make up at the end of the season, so they stayed on their 94 wins. Also, if you go from February 28th, Chapman's birthday, Harvey Kuhn's death day, to the day that Chapman was picked up by the Cubs, it was a span of 148 days. If you write out Cleveland Indians equals 148 the big way. This year it's the 112th World Series. Chapman was picked up 112 days after the Cubs' first game. Also, the Cleveland Indians beat the Detroit Tigers 112 days before the 112th World Series begins, and they beat them with the score of 1-12, a lot like 112. The Indians also beat Detroit on April 22nd this year, which this year was the 112th day of the year because of a leap year. But the reason that's interesting is because it's their coach's birthday, Terry Francona. It's his birthday, and he was actually born on the 112th day of the year because it wasn't a leap year. So the Indians beat Detroit on that day as well. He's also 57 years old, like World Series. Anyway, let's get into this video. I'm just trying to make more information, so I wanted to re-explain a little bit. There's a whole lot more, so check out the videos I leave in the description. There's a whole lot more to this and how it ties into Michael Jordan. Terry Francona was even the coach of the Birmingham Barons when Michael Jordan was on the team. And also his dad, Tito Francona, is super big in this. He even threw the first pitch or the opening pitch in Game 1 against the Red Sox. Also then, in regards to Michael Jordan and the year that Michael Jordan played, that was also the year that we had the Major League Baseball strike in 1994 that began on August 12th. The last games were played on August 11th. So I've also mentioned the number 48 being very significant around the Indians. And what's interesting in regards to that is Michael Jordan was born on the 48th day of the year. He also joined the minor league baseball team, the Barons. His first game with them was on 4/8 of 1994. The Indians haven't won the World Series since the year 1948. His first baseball game, too, also on 4/8 of 94. That's a date numerology of 106. Remember, he retired from basketball on 10/6, October 6th. He also played 127 games with them, which is interesting because if you go from the day that Michael Jordan first played the game on 4/8 to the day of the Major League Baseball strike, a span of 127 days. He played 127 games with them. The strike comes 127 days later. It's also a span of 4 months and 5 days. The reason that sticks out so much to me, for one, the Curse of the Billy Goat was all about the number 45 and 54, the reflection of 45. It happened in the year 45. Cubs equal 45, Wrigley equals 45, Illinois equals 45. In Back to the Future, they're even supposed to beat Miami in the World Series. Miami equals 45. Anyway, think about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan also wore the number 45. The last time that the Indians won the World Series was in 1948, but it was the 45th World Series. The last time that the Cubs won the World Series was the 5th World Series. They also won the year before. So the only 2 World Series the Cubs have won, the 4th one and the 5th one, 45. But look at this. The Chicago Bulls also retired Michael Jordan's number 23. They retired it on 11/1 of 1994. It was 1 year, 27 days after he announced his retirement on 10/6 of 93. So 1 year, 27 days. The baseball strike happens 127 days after his first game. He plays 127 games with the Barons. Something special about 127 and Michael Jordan. After this season as well, it will be 23 seasons since Michael Jordan played baseball. You know, famous for wearing the number 23. He even comes back to basketball wearing number 45 for 22 games and then switches back to 23 on his 23rd game back. I've even mentioned how it's connected to the death of Sam Foltz and Mike Sadler. They died on the 23rd anniversary of Michael Jordan's dad dying. Nebraska's also in its 127th season. So just something to think about. But anyway, in 1994, look at the White Sox record, 67-46, and they played 113 games. Michael Jordan in gematria equals 113. Michael Jordan also signed with the White Sox on February 7th of 1994, and then he retired on March 10th of 95, which is a span of 1 year, 1 month, 3 days, a lot like 113. His name equals 113. The White Sox play 113 games before the strike. Kobe Bryant also equals 113 in gematria, just to put it in perspective. I could be wrong, but I believe Kobe Bryant's first ever NBA game was also on November 3rd, 11/3. Anyway, what's interesting about that season in 94 for the White Sox, 67-46. If you read out Cleveland Indians, they equal 67 the small way. Chicago Cubs equal 46 the small way. So just interesting in regards to that. I've been talking about how I think it might be the Indians versus the Cubs. You know, and I possibly could be wrong, but it's looking pretty good right now. But, you know, there's a whole lot to this. I could be missing something very crucial that could throw it off, you know. If you include the end date, the total span of days for Michael Jordan's baseball career, it's 1 year, 1 month, 4 days, which is super interesting in regards to the 114 I mentioned in the beginning of the video. If the Cubs win the World Series, they'll have 114 total wins. Michael Jordan also struck out 114 times when he played with the Barons. Also, what's interesting is that he retired on 3-10, or you can also write it as 10/3. The Cubs started the postseason with 103 wins. Michael Jordan also retired from baseball on a date numerology of 108. 108 is all around the Cubs this year. And think about Michael Jordan in regards to Chicago, right? Just Chicago in general. The Willis Tower in Chicago is even 108 stories tall. The Great Chicago Fire was also on October 8th, 10/8, 145 years ago, which was also the year that the Cubs were in the Major League. The first year of the Major Leagues, 145 years ago. If you write out Chicago, Illinois, it equals 145. So the Cubs in their 145th season. If you write out 145, it equals 108. There's 108 double stitches on the baseball. Also, in regards to Chapman, I said that it was 112 days after the Cubs' first game, but from the beginning of the season, it's a total span of either 113 or 114 days, depending if you use the end date. So once again, fitting for what's going on. Interesting though, 8/8 was the 127th day of the season, and the Curse of the Billy Goat is all about 88. Curse of the Billy Goat equals 88. I'll leave my Steve Bartman video. I talk a lot about the 88 stuff in regards to the Curse of the Billy Goat, but the Marlins even came back after the Steve Bartman incident and scored 8 runs in the 8th inning. It was the Cubs' 88th season at Wrigley. So I also said the Indians coach then, he was born on the 112th day of the year, but this year his birthday was the 113th day. Just seems kind of fitting with Michael Jordan, who equals 113. He was even the coach for the Birmingham Barons when Michael Jordan played there, and he had a 223-203 record. Very, very interesting because Curse of the Billy Goat the Big Way equals 223. His dad, also then a famous baseball player, I said he threw the first pitch in the opening game in the postseason here against the Red Sox. He's even born on 11/4, a lot like 114. In regards to Cleveland as well, think about the Cleveland Cavaliers. A while back I was talking all about this back-to-back theme that was going on. I was thinking it was for the Warriors to win back-to-back championships, but possibly it's just back-to-back championships for Cleveland, you know? Basketball, then baseball. Who knows, though? I still think the Cubs are going to win, but there's a lot of interesting things that keep popping up. Anyway, born on 11/4. He also made his Major League debut on the 108th day of 1956. It also says that he tied Rocky Colavito for second place in American League Rookie of the Year balloting behind the Chicago White Sox shortstop. So just interesting, he's even tied into Rocky Colavito, the guy who is the reason that the Indians are cursed. And he also played with the Indians from the year 59 to 64. So he was there when Harvey Kuhn played there. He was there when the trade happened even. Anyway, I got a whole lot more to talk about in regards to the number 48. I want to talk about Game 1 and Game 2 and some thoughts I had on it. I'm just going to make a separate video, try to make them a little bit shorter. But there's definitely something in regards to the number 48 that's super significant to the Cleveland Indians. So just interesting, Jordan born on the 48th day of the year. The Indians coach right now. He even won his first World Series, or he broke the curse for the Boston Red Sox, and he did it when he was 48 years old. And it is funny, in basketball I talked about how it seemed like they were doing something like in reverse time, you know? How the Bulls had the 72-10 record, and then Golden State beat them. It seemed like they were doing it like backwards, like they were foreshadowing something to go backwards. I remember talking about that. So possibly that's what's going on, you know? They did the 96, 90, or 95, 96, and now they're doing like 94, 95 or something like that and connecting it to it. I mean, I guess we will find out, but it's very interesting in regards to the 112th World Series. And the Super Bowl this year is in Houston. Houston equals 112. Houston was the team who won the 2 NBA Finals when Michael Jordan was retired. But yeah, leaving it at that, I'm going to make some more videos later tonight, so have a good one.